Hi, Ivy. I'm Brianna. I'm going to be your counselor today. So what is it that you wanted to come in and talk about?
I guess I kind of just wanted to talk about my mom per se and the relationship that we have and just the concerns and when with that.
Okay.
Um, I don't know. It's me and my mom have been through a lot. I mean, whose parent and kid hasn't been through a lot, but with me, I just don't feel like we're really that close. And that bothers me more so because, she is my mom. I want to have a stronger relationship with her. And when I was younger, my dad passed away. So she was only the one I have left. And right now, being the age I am, I just kind of wish I had more of that bond with her.
So are you feeling a little, disappointed that because she is in your life, it's difficult because your dad's not there, so you're kind of having a gap that you need to fill, so you kind of value your relationship with your mom.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that. It's more so the gap filled. I have two aunts and I'm very close with my aunts, and it's the kind of relationships that I should have with my mom considering what happened. It's just the way I've been thinking about it was more so along the lines that I did lose my dad at a young age. She remarried about 5 years after that, so it wasn't that long after. I think my dad passed away when I was about 5 years old, and she remarried by the time I was 10. And that's when my youngest sister was already on the way. So with that, I guess it was more so along the lines I understood what she did to support us. I mean, she loves my stepdad, and we've just never had the greatest relationship. Um, and with that entire process, my aunts have just been there my entire life helping me with everything. When my mom can't, she has 4 kids. She was going to school to be a nurse. She was working full time. Like, I give her a lot of credit for doing what she did to raise us, but I think what was left out, a lot of it was really just spending time with us, I guess. More so along that. I I just kind of wish that we had a stronger bond than what I have with my aunts right
Right,
now.
right. Well, I mean, that's good that you are noticing things with your mom doing the best she can. I mean, you realize the whole situation. You still keep a good head on your shoulders about, your dad passing, and that must be really difficult for you. I couldn't even imagine going through something like that. So your relationship with your mom and your aunts is probably something you want to try to value as much as you can, but right now it's not what you have probably wanted it to seem as, and it's a bit of a touchy subject.
Yeah, and I can kind of understand where maybe that loophole of us not really having the best relationship. I know as I was growing up, it was more. I mean, I guess I wouldn't want to put it as I was the first child, so I was the worst. But, I feel like I did give my mom some of the hardest times while we were growing up, and some of the situations that we've been through just kind of pushed us away. There was a moment of time where I wasn't talking to her for the longest time because of the things she's done and the things I've said, and just kind of the whole situation that went about it. And then eventually, we started to kind of rekindle that relationship. It wasn't as good at first because we were in such a rocky place and we are just trying to kind of work past it. And for me, I was holding on to a lot of regret, I guess you could say, about how things turned out and the way the situations went about it. But I think I was holding more of a negative feeling, or I wouldn't per se call it more of a grudge. I would just kind of base it off of just not having the best feelings towards her because she is my mom. I feel like with certain things that have happened, I just, considering how things panned out, I wouldn't expect my mom to be that way, and that's why I am so close with my aunts. And I appreciate everything they've done, and I see how hard my mom has worked throughout her entire life to try to support this family. And I think where everything was just left out was in the midst of everything happening. And I just kind of wish we had that better connection and try and move past it. But with me, it's kind of hard right now just because I don't know how to say things to her. There's a lot of things that go through my head about the things I've said to her and how I treated her. And, you know, it goes both ways because we both said things that we weren't proud of. But it's one of those things where me and my stepdad aren't that close, and I don't have that father figure, so I would want to look to my mom for that support, but that's just something that's kind of lacking, I suppose.
Yeah. So maybe you're feeling a little bit of regret of the things you've done, but with that same concept on your mind, knowing that, you know, with you again pointing out the positives of your mom, you're maybe, you know, you're feeling regret for, you know, maybe putting her through some trouble. And, you know, every family has that situation where, you know, you're still a kid at that time. I mean, kid's not going to be perfect. They're going to give the parent hell sometimes, you know, but, you know, and then later in life you're feeling a little more regret about it. But back to your, you know, your relationship with just your mom individually and feeling regret for those situations, like, what do you think you've done now to maybe improve those situations, or, you know, maybe try to make things, I mean, not saying they're bad in the first place, but good again, you know, maybe kind of, what have you tried doing to help enhance your relationship with your mother?
Well, I guess starting back to where it all kind of happened, I just kind of feel like, you know, when you have, because I'm not a parent myself, but I understand where, you know, I was hitting an age where I was 17, 18, and fighting with my mom wasn't abnormal at the time. You know, I just feel like that is something that any kind of relationship between a parent and a child is going to have a moment of time where, you know, they are getting to a certain age where they are going to start fighting a lot more, especially because me and my mom are a lot alike. So when we argue, it's almost like we never let the other one talk. And she's worse at that than I am. And mostly I just kind of wanted her to listen. And I know that I've gone about it the wrong ways. You know, being at that age, I was screaming at her. I was telling her all these worst things. And it's part of the reason I think that I'm feeling the worst about it is because, you know, she had me when she was 20. She didn't go to college right away. She started going back to college, I think, before my third sister, and kind of in between there. And she wanted to be a nurse and, you know, taking care of 4 kids and working full time and going to school full time, especially for nursing, because I'm definitely not a person that gets into the nursing. It's something that's a very difficult subject for me. So I gave her the absolute most credit in the world for doing what she was doing. But I know with me and having that regret of the things that I've said, I was more so along the lines of, you know, in the moment we were in, saying that she's exactly that what I don't want to be, and this is the reason why I want to succeed in school. And I look at it as a good and a bad thing, because, you know, I should have never said that to her. She was trying as hard as she can to, like, keep living for us, but in a greater sense, I guess I looked at it as, you know, she is doing all this for us. She was working so hard, but I don't want to put myself in that position per se. You know, I saw how hard she struggled from day in, day out, and to this day, like, still struggling day in and day out. And I wanted to go to school and do better for myself because of those reasons, but I turned it into a way at that time where it was negative, and I made her feel really bad about it. But I never was able to get a good chance, I guess, to ever explain any of this to her, because when I do see her, she's sleeping all the time. She works 3rd shifts. She takes care of my sisters during the day. Like, she sleeps when she can. So for me to get a hold of her, and, like, when I do go over there, sometimes my sisters are always there because they miss me, you know, so I never really have a moment to actually sit down and talk to her and let her know how I really feel in all that sense. And it's also along the lines where I'm definitely over what happened now, because there was a moment the first time I moved out, it was because I personally felt like I was forced me and my mom were just in a very rough place. We were arguing all the time. We were fighting all the time. Like, there's things that were done that shouldn't have been done. There's things that have been said that shouldn't have been said. And for a good, I would say, 6 months or so, like, it was a good period of time where she, after I moved out, where I did not want to talk to her, she took me off all of her payment plans, all of, like, insurance, everything. And there was also money issues involved, and she ended up taking over half of $9,000 from me. And that was another issue that came across. I just didn't trust her with a lot of things, and the way she treated things, I just didn't trust her overall. And I remember there was moments where I would start writing out letters and things to give to her to explain the way I felt and about the situation, but I never was able to actually give it to her. And I know that I saved some of them on my laptop, and today, going back and looking at them, I'm really glad that I didn't make that decision, because I feel like it would have put us in a worse place.
So you're feeling a little bit of a sympathy for your mom, and the fact that, like, I mean, you're doing really good with pointing out the positives and understanding her situation and what had all happened, including with your father. And, you know, she did, you know, if, correct me if I'm wrong, she did remarry, and she had, you know, so, I mean, she did what she had to do to move on. She did what, you know, she had to do to try to have you feel like a family again and go through this hard time together. And I mean, from what you're saying, I feel like you're feeling sympathy for your mother, but at the same time, I mean, she's where she's at because of, you know, like, things that happen, in fact, in her own way of coping. And so, I mean, it's really great that you're pointing out, you know, her side of it, but also in the sense that it's kind of affecting your relationship with her at the same time, because, you know, things that happen, and then the whole ordeal with, you know, the money situation. Do you think that maybe there's a little bit of rockiness and that it all kind of relates to your father passing away, or do you think it's more something that it kind of just developed with the traumatic event that happened, and that's maybe why you and your mom's relationship was not steady?
I think when it comes to my dad, we have very different outlooks on it, because understanding the situation, she had a 5-year-old at the time, and also my brother was 3 at the time. So when he passed away, and the way everything went about, I couldn't imagine what she was going through at the time. Like, she had 2 very young children, and, you know, then he passed away, and it was hard to cope. I'm sure, like, with what was running through her head, like, how is she gonna support us? How is she gonna go on about this? But I think her thoughts on it is more negative towards my dad. Mine is more, I can see why it happened. I also think it's for selfish reasons that were a part of it, but I just think we both have very different thinking views on it. Like, I'm more of a sympathetic, empathetic person towards it. You know, I understand the reasons why, but, like, I obviously was only 5 at the time, so I never really understood what was going on. And when it comes to talking about him, she's never wanted to talk about him. So it was something growing up for my entire life that she just didn't want to talk about it. But for me, you know.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think she doesn't want to talk about your father at all?
I think at this point, she doesn't want to talk about it because I think overall it might be harder for her. You know, he had a lot of like mental issues going on with himself, and at that time period, you know, it was a lot of where 9/11 was happening, you know, war was going on, people being drafted from time to time, and I just think in that moment specifically, it was already immensely stressed for a ton of people. And I think with the way the situations went about it and how things panned out, I think she shut herself down from it. I just don't think she ever wanted to talk about it. And when she would talk about it, she, like, me and her would fight. And she would bring up points as to why I'm like my dad, but in a negative way. So I think that's kind of where our differences stand with it. So I just kind of never brought it up since.
What do you think from here on out? What do you think you could do? Because I know you said you try to talk to her, but anytime you do talk to her, she is sleeping. I mean, she's got her hands full and taking care of others, and you know she's got a really busy life at the moment. What do you think could happen on your end to where you could try to fit a time that works best for you guys, whether it's shooting a text or maybe giving a call or anything? What do you think are steps that you could take to try to enhance your guys' relationship to where you could talk in a comfortable manner, maybe not about your dad at the moment, I mean, just so that you build a concept to where you're feeling comfortable with talking about what happened, because that might be a root of a problem and why you had moved out, and maybe why, you know, maybe get more answers and maybe you find out a little bit more about, you know, your father that you didn't know, and maybe build being more comfortable with it. But what do you think, what are things do you think that you could do to try to work with both of your schedules and maybe talk about issues that need to be talked about?
Right, and it's kind of funny that you say that, because they are just kind of racing thoughts that go through my head like that with what I could do, what I could say, and I'm kind of the person that gets nervous and kind of buckles if I'm talking about emotional things with people, especially when it comes to talking with my mom. And I just think it's because it's a more personal situation. When I'm dealing with anybody that I care a lot about, but I'm bringing up a touchy subject or something personal or something that bothers me, then it's just always been harder for me to be able to get out what I say. I know exactly how I want to say it and what I want to say, but when in the moment, I just think my emotions get too in the way of what I actually want to say, and then that's usually when, you know, things are said wrong and taken the wrong way, and usually goes in a different direction. So for me to get it out there, it's always just been easier for me to write it down on paper, write every single thought. That way I can get it all out of my head. I can get exactly what I want to say out without having my emotions affect what I'm saying in that moment. And I've been wanting to do it for a long time. I've also wanted to talk to her, but you know, with my sisters there, that's not a subject to talk about with them. I mean, they're only 12 and 8. They don't need to be a part of any of that.
Do you think, have you ever tried having a journal at all, just set aside for your own thoughts? Maybe you make a journal for your thoughts, and do you ever think of considering that maybe a way to get through to your mom? I mean, you said yourself that, you know, you think it's always better, you can get more out when you write it down, and I mean, I can agree with you on that. I mean, people's thoughts, it's so much easier to write it down when you're thinking clearly about it and you're able to erase and word it right, than randomly being up in a situation and have to talk about something
Right.
that you're like, it comes out because you're nervous and it's loud and it's just emotional. And I can understand that. I can understand how that'd be really difficult. But do you ever give any thought into maybe making a separate journal or writing something down and maybe mailing it to your mom? Or maybe, because then maybe that would be a surprise to have her. I mean,
Yeah, and you know, how I said before in the beginning of our session, when I was writing a journal to her that I wanted to send to her, but it was a very negative letter. I told her a lot of the reasons. Long story short, I was very glad I didn't send it, because it would have been a mistake. It would have been a mistake after going back later on and reading how I wrote it. And yeah, I've considered journaling with it, but I more so do it on my laptop, and I just kind of write down what I'm feeling in that moment, save it, restart. And I was doing that for a little bit when times do really get harder, but for the most part, I've just never went through with it. I've definitely started them, I've definitely finished them, but I just never gotten to a point where I was able to fully get it out and send it.
right.
So
Well, I mean, that's still good of you to do, you know, the fact that you're even just initially typing and writing it, whatever you need to do just to get it out, because sometimes that helps relieve a lot of stress, and maybe it helps with not, you know, because you can't just keep it in your mind. If you write it down and put it somewhere else that you can get back to it later, it ends up maybe feeling better for you that you know, you're at least getting it out, and maybe not hitting send. I mean, that's still a great step into just getting it out. So, but on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you can do it, and 1 being, or 0 being you like absolutely don't think you can, do you think there is a in between scale to where you think you would, go on with maybe journaling a little bit more? Because it seems to relieve some stress and anxiety for you, and you said it makes you feel a little better. On a scale of 1 to 10, uh, what number do you think you would?
That's kind of harder to answer only because it's very simple for me to type up everything that I want her to know and just give it to her or to mail it out or vice versa. It's very easy to do that. There's just something I can't tell you the reasons why. I can't explain to you why I don't. I just don't. I just never go through with it, right? And
I mean, just type it out and get it. Like, just save it in your own personal.
Yeah.
You don't have to send it. You don't have to let anyone know. You don't have to let me know. Just.
Yeah.
How do you think on a scale of 1 to 10? Do you think you would be able to? And it's okay if it's low, but do you think you would go back into journaling?
Yeah, I would put it more at like a 7, where I'm definitely over halfway of doing it, but not to the full extent of actually finishing of what I actually want to do. But
all right, so it's at a really good. It's a pretty high number. I mean, just really quickly, because I know we're running out of time. Do you think why is it not a lower number? Why is it not a 3 or a 5? Why would you put it at a 7?
I think it's because these are words that I want her to know. Like, at some point, I do want her to know everything that I would write down in the journal. I want her to know that putting it at like a 2 or a 3 is more so me saying, it's in the back of my head, but not enough to push it to where I'd even consider it, So I feel like putting it at a 7 is, I have done it and I want to, and I have full intentions of doing it. It's just the matter of when and why, or not why, but like when and how, and that whole
situation. Yeah, well, I can understand exactly where you're coming from, and that's got to be a really hard thing to battle and deal with. I mean, not only with your father, but your relationship with your mother, and I mean, only having so much family left, and considering that you're moved out. I mean, you kind of want to cherish things you can, before in your mind you think it's too late. And I think journaling is a great idea, and I'm really glad that you're also pointing out positives, with your mom's side. I mean, as much as a child may not agree with their parent, it's always good to always notice both sides of the spectrum. So you're doing really good with that, and your ambivalence, of deciding which or. But I hope to see you again. Please schedule another appointment, and we'll talk more about it again. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you.